A local sheriff is under fire tonight, all because of what you are about to hear.
It's a secretly recorded meeting with the man and his staff.
Critics of Macon County Sheriff Mark Gammons say he was straight out threatening his employees. If they campaigned for his opponent, he would fire them. The sheriff says he was only trying to tell his employees not to campaign for his opponent during work hours. Take a listen, see what you think. It's the very first thing you see driving into Macon County. But it's what you're about to hear that shows how intense this election has become.
Ms. Point Forward, you can't support me. I'm getting you free out this morning.
That's Sheriff Mark Gammons in a March 21st meeting with his staff. He doesn't realize he's being recorded by one of his own employees. The recording was given to the Channel 4i team and raises questions if Gammons was telling his employees, support me or lose your job.
If you're with me, stand up and say you support Mark Gammons. If you're not, then go ahead, just go. Don't make it easy on yourself.
It does raise question if you're intimidating your employees.
I've never intimidated. I've been over backwards for an employee, but it's kind of like some point in time you got to be a boss and you have to let people know the rules.
The rules, the sheriff says, are that they can't campaign for his opponent during work time. He suspects some of his employees were doing just that. In some cases, that message is communicated like this.
You can't support me, that's fine. It's hard to support you, sign your check. You try to take food out of my mouth? Why should I worry about not taking food out of your mouth?
Somebody could take that and saying, if you're not going to vote for me, you can leave.
No, what I meant by that is I said I wiped the slate clean, let's move forward, let's be good. But the point I had, when we leave this meeting, if you feel like that you don't want to be here or if I've done something wrong to you, then yeah, I would be glad to give you whatever you need if you don't want to work here. But it wasn't to threaten him and saying, go do this with me or else I'm going to fire you. That was no intention.
The Channel 4i team shared the entire recording with Vanderbilt professor Bruce Berry, who wrote a book on ethics and political speech in the workplace. He spoke to us from his home in Colorado.
That does sound like at least a veiled threat that if you engage in off-work political activity or political speech that doesn't fit with his own campaign, that there could be consequences for you. That's clearly inappropriate.
Let's be very clear. In several parts of the speech, the sheriff says he's not going to fire employees for not voting for him.
I'm not going to fire you for that, I promise.
But 2 seconds later, he says this.
But that in my office will get you jobless.
He doesn't make specific threats. If you don't do this, you're going to lose your job. But there does seem to be some veiled threats there.
Can you understand why some employees would hear what you had to say and felt like that they couldn't vote for who they wanted to?
If they felt intimidated, I apologize, but that was none of my intentions to do.
The sheriff gave us access to his entire staff without him watching to ask if they felt intimidated. Detective Ron Smith agreed to talk to us on camera.
I don't feel like it was an election intimidation meeting. No, sir, I don't.
I can imagine that people will see this and say, hey, look, he's your boss. We're here at the office. Of course you're going to say this. Of course you're going to be in support of him. Is there any truth to that?
No, sir. I'm originally not from here. If I thought that there was a snake in the grass or, you know, I would be one of the first whistleblowers.
The sheriff says the only reason you're hearing all this is dirty politics, leaked to hurt his campaign. A campaign, he says in the recordings, he intends to win.
Miss Point Forward, if you can't ride this ship, get off. Because my election ain't begun.
There is a Tennessee state code that reads it is unlawful to fire employees based on how they vote or to coerce an employee to vote a certain way.
The county sheriff's department has come under scrutiny again for what some say is pressure politics.
Did the sheriff threaten to fire his deputy over an election? The question stems from a new recording obtained by the Channel 4i team. It is the latest development in what's become a contentious battle. between 4 former employees of the Macon County Sheriff's Department and their boss. Those employees met with the TBI today, claiming they were fired because their families supported Sheriff Mark Gammons as opponent in the election.
Well, what you're about to hear was recorded by former Macon County Deputy Josh Smith. He says he started recording the conversation when he feared his father's support of the sheriff's opponent could cost him his job.
I just don't want my job in jeopardy because of what my dad does.
I don't remember this, okay?
Former Macon County Deputy Josh Smith says he got this call from Sheriff Mark Gammons on May 10th after Smith's father put a sign in his own yard for Gammons' opponent in last week's election.
You tell him both that, son. You better remember who gives you your job.
I just don't want to lose my job.
No.
The Channel 4i team was only given a copy of the audio after Smith and these 3 former employees of the sheriff's office were fired on Friday, the day after Gammons won the election.
He called me and threatened my job because my dad would not support him.
That's what I understand. My daddy's doing this, not me. We're 2 different people.
I tell you what, my daddy was doing it. I tell him to get his head out, because I'm getting about $36,000 a year from Sheriff Gammons.
You just heard the sheriff talk about Smith's $36,000 salary. Now listen to what Gammons says next.
You tell him he needs to find you $36,000 a year.
Are you going to fire me because of what he's doing?
I'm not firing you. Did I say I'm firing you?
But on Friday, Smith got this termination letter in his mailbox that only states your services are no longer needed. Our repeated phone calls to the sheriff were not returned by our deadline. The firings of the 4 employees comes a month after a Channel 4i team investigation that revealed another recording, this one made in March, of the sheriff speaking to his entire staff.
You can't support me, that's fine. It's hard to support you, sign your check. You trying to take food out of my mouth? Why should I worry about not taking food out of your mouth?
The sheriff then told the Channel 4i team he was only warning employees not to campaign for his opponent during work hours, and that he was not going to fire anyone if they didn't support his campaign.
But it wasn't to threaten him and saying, go do this with me or else I'm going to fire you. That was no intention.
But Smith now has his doubts, especially after replaying this conversation about Smith's father.
I know you're upset, but I wish you'd just talk to him about it, not me, because I didn't do it.
Hell no, I ain't talking to him. He can make his little fee, let him land. I'm giving you a fair warning. What you need to do from this point on is make up which side of the fence you're on. And get off of them teeter-totter and jump on Bush's side or jump on my side. That's all I'm asking you.
I also want to point out neither Smith nor any of the employees who were fired provided us with a recording of that meeting.
Was a Middle Tennessee sheriff using his employees and county vehicles for his own political campaign.
Undercover video by the Channel 4i team, along with surveillance video, has some legal experts questioning if state laws may have been broken by the Macon County Sheriff.
Well, the Channel 4i team had been getting reports that Macon County Sheriff Mark Gammons was using his staff and county vehicles for his campaign. So we wondered, how do you confirm that? Well, it turns out there's government surveillance cameras pointed right at the sheriff's office. And we reviewed days of video and found this. It's August 8th, the day after Sheriff Mark Gammons is reelected, and surveillance video of the side parking lot where the sheriff's vehicles are parked shows something unusual, something that has this legal expert raising serious questions.
What I saw in the video that you showed me, that's over the line.
Watch closely, and you'll see the sheriff's campaign signs showing up at the sheriff's office. Remember, it's the day after the election, and one by one, deputies and detectives leave the sheriff's office and throughout the day return with his political signs. They start stacking up, really stacking up. So there's a couple questions about that. First off, why are county employees in county vehicles being used to pick up the sheriff's personal political signs? And they're all being paid to do it. We reviewed all of their timesheets. All these employees got paid for a day's work.
And they're there to protect the folks in the county and not to be running the sheriff's signs around.
And there's also something you may remember from history class. It's called the Hatch Act. There's a federal and state Hatch Act, and the Tennessee version states it's unlawful for elected officials to use facilities of the state, including equipment and vehicles, for campaign advertising or activities.
You don't have folks doing that kind of work who are law enforcement officers, particularly, picking up signs for a political candidate. To me, that's exactly what the Hatch Act prohibits.
And there's more. This video was from June 20th, the month before the election. And at roughly 1:30 in the afternoon, it shows the sheriff and some of his employees carrying something into a county vehicle. That something is a tent. You see the vehicle drive away. Well, it just so happened that the Channel 4i team was in Macon County that day because we'd been told the sheriff was using county vehicles to transport materials for his campaign. Well, June 20th is the beginning of Hillbilly Days, the county's big fair. When we showed up that afternoon, a tent was set up for the sheriff. Keep in mind, everyone who campaigns here has to bring their own tent. And there's the sheriff and one of his employees showing up at the fair in the same county car that the tent was being loaded into.
Obviously, those people are using county vehicles and the like for private political purposes.
So you may be wondering, isn't the Hatch Act for state vehicles and employees? Well, turns out the sheriff's office takes state money, a lot of it. County records show the state pays the county jail to house inmates. The state gives the sheriff's office litter grants worth tens of thousands of dollars. And last year, the sheriff's office received a grant from TDOT for more than $24,000. We wanted to ask the sheriff about all this. We called and emailed for weeks. And this week, we went to his office and even his home. He didn't respond to any of our inquiries.
Tonight, a lawsuit has been filed aimed at forcing the Macon County Sheriff out of office.
It comes after a series of Channel 4i team investigations into what some called political threats by the sheriff toward his employees and questionable use of county equipment in his re-election campaign.
It is certainly something you don't hear about every day. Citizens filing a lawsuit asking a judge to remove their sheriff based on what the Channel 4i team exposed and other allegations. And it's not just former employees leading the charge. With that, Emily Santes knows she's making some enemies.
I've lost several friends over the situation.
And she's not alone. One after another, these citizens of Macon County sign a lawsuit seeking to oust their sheriff.
He's an elected official who continues to break the law.
Using county vehicles and county employees for private use, willful misconduct in office.
Attorney Roland Mumford drafted the suit citing malfeasance or neglect of duty to remove Sheriff Mark Gammons. Among the plaintiffs, retired sheriff's employee David Gunter.
No one is above the law.
The lawsuit cites video and audio recordings first exposed by the Channel 4i team.
Y'all have all heard the recording.
Including secretly recorded audio of the sheriff in a meeting that raised questions if he was sending his employees a message, support me politically or lose your jobs.
You can't support me, that's fine. It's hard to support you, sign your check.
And the firings of 4 employees who claimed their family supported Gammons' opponent. One employee recorded this conversation he had with the sheriff.
I just don't want my job in jeopardy because of what my dad does.
I won't remember this, okay?
And our investigation that revealed surveillance video that appears to show deputies and detectives picking up the sheriff's campaign signs in county vehicles while on the clock.
We have that on video thanks to Channel 4.
He is, on taxpayers' dime, used government equipment. He's used our deputies who are supposed to be defending us to go run his errands. I think it's absolutely ridiculous.
Sheriff Gammons did speak with us for our first story, claiming he wasn't threatening his employees.
But it wasn't to threaten him and saying, go do this with me or else I'm going to fire you. That was no intention.
But since then, he hasn't returned our calls for comment. A vehicle was in the sheriff's parking spot today, but a secretary said he wasn't there. I called what we're told is a personal cell phone.
Yes, I was looking for the sheriff.
Who's speaking?
Sheriff, this is Jeremy Finley with Channel 4 News.
I'm sorry, you got the chief deputy. He's not available at this moment.
Okay, I just needed to try to speak with him. Is he available?
If I can locate him.
Okay, I'll hold on, thanks.
2 seconds later, the call ended.
Hello?
I've always kind of said that when there's some kind of corruption within our government, we have to stand up and do something to change it.
The lawsuits seek a judge in Macon County to hear the suit and determine if Gammons should be removed. The lawsuit also makes other claims, including that a former deputy intends to testify under oath that he drove the sheriff to different homes to have intimate relations with women. Again, we want to ask the sheriff about all this, but we have yet to hear back from him.